So maybe you've heard of a shared donor egg program or sharing an egg donor, and you've wondered, what in the world is that all about? Well, stick around because I'm going to discuss just that. What's up? I'm Corlandos Scott, and I'm an assisted reproduction attorney who's dedicated his whole practice to helping people grow their family through the various types of assisted reproductive technologies, like egg donation. So what is a shared donor program? Well, we'll get into that today. I'm going to talk about what it is. I'll also talk about why share a donor. And then I'll cover the process and the logistics behind a shared donor cycle. Let's get to it. When I've asked my friends if they knew what a shared egg donor program was, I've gotten everything from, is that a breakfast thing? All the way to, is that like splitting an Uber? And oddly enough, it's sort of like splitting an Uber. While that's not a perfect analogy, the point that I'm making is a shared donor program is when two sets of recipients do one cycle with an egg donor and they split the results of that egg retrieval. Of course, the benefits of doing that is the decreased cost to the recipients. Now, the downside is neither recipient gets the full amount of the donation. But let's say there was a donor cycle where the donor's fee was $10,000. Well, instead of one set of recipients or one recipient having to foot the entire $10,000 donor fee, that recipient or set of recipients is splitting the cost with another recipient or set of recipients. So each recipient or sets of recipients are paying $5,000 each, and they're splitting the resulting egg retrieval amount. So you might be wondering, why would I share a donor cycle with another set of recipients? Well, aside from the obvious benefits that I just talked about as far as the reduced cost to do the cycle, you'd be interested to know that it doesn't necessarily lessen your chances of success with growing your family. And that's because, on average, donors will produce enough eggs to satisfy two separate cycle attempts. And that's because, on average, most donors will produce enough eggs in the retrieval process to satisfy two sets of intended parents. Let's see how this could break down. On average, about 10 to 15 eggs are retrieved per cycle. And that's on the average end. I've often seen many more, up to 50. Now, when we're talking about a retrieval that produces 50 or 60 eggs, it's not always how many eggs, but the quality factors in also. So, hey, I'm not a reproductive endocrinologist, but I would just be a little wary if we're looking at an aggressive cycle regimen that's setting you up to produce 60 eggs. But anyway, refer to your doctor to get the tips on that. Now, back to our example of a retrieval that produced 10 to 15 eggs. Of those 10 to 15 eggs, we'd consider an excellent pregnancy rate to be about 5 or 8 from those resulting 10 to 15. So let's say with 8 viable eggs, we could assign 4 eggs each to each set of intended parents. Those intended parents would then take either the sperm from the intended father or a sperm donor and hopefully create 4 viable embryos. So as you can see, the cost reward is something that you have to weigh, but it may be worth it for you to consider a shared donor egg program. Some other ancillary benefits of sharing the donor cycle is the fact that you also split the cost of some of the other things that are necessary for the donor process. Things like the cost of the screening, the cost of the medication, and the actual cost to the medical provider for engaging in the medical process. Before I talk about the process and the logistics of a shared donor cycle, if you like this video, then you'll definitely want to go back and watch my video on how to choose an egg donor. In there, I give you some tips and the lowdown on how to make sure you get the donor that's right for you. So be sure to check it out. Now let's talk about how the process of a shared donor cycle actually works. Honestly, it's really the same as if you were proceeding with an egg donor arrangement on your own, but with the split cost. However, there are a couple little nuances that I want to cover. One of the nuances is one set of intended parents or the intended parent is referred to as the primary intended parent or parents. and the other is referred to the secondary intended parent or parents. So what does this mean? Well, we have to consider what happens if the retrieval results in an odd number of eggs. Well, you can't split an odd number evenly, so who gets that extra egg? We also have to consider the quality of eggs. As I said before, it's not just about quantity, but it's also about the quality. Eggs are graded by embryologists, so you want to make sure you know who gets what grade of eggs. So with this in mind, you have to consider who gets to be considered the primary parent or parents and who will be considered the secondary parent or parents. And different agencies handle this differently. Sometimes the first come, first serve is the rule, and the first set of parents to engage in the shared program are considered primary. Sometimes they choose between the two. Sometimes the parents decide to offset certain costs with the primary parent footing a little bit more of the shared cycle expenses in order to take that primary position. It's really no one size fits all. Just make sure you know that there is some room for you to negotiate and make this process work for you. There's also something else that I want you to consider that not many people do. Something that I like to have my clients do when they're entering into a shared donor program is to make sure that they have 3 separate contracts. So primary and the donor gets a contract, secondary and the donor gets a contract, and then there is an agreement between each parent or sets of parents. So there's a 3-way contract. Why do I recommend that? Because each of these separate sets of parents or parent is obligated to the donor separate of each other. The donor at the end of the day is going to want to make sure, well, what happens if one of the parents disappears? Is all the burden going to fall on the other parent? And if I'm representing that donor, I want that answer to be yes. So make sure that you have an understanding. And then you want an understanding between the sets of parents or between the parents, because you want to make sure that there's a clear understanding and there's no arguments when those eggs are retrieved as for who gets what. Now, some people think that's a little bit of overkill and they say we should just include them all on one big contract. And hey, reach out to your professional and get the advice of your choosing. I'm not your lawyer, not yet anyway, so make sure that you consult your own lawyer. But I like to see that because I think it's the cleanest and it's the most clear way to go about it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're watching this, you may also have some questions around surrogacy. If you do, I have something for you. It's called Stress-Free Surrogacy, and it's a training I did that walks you through the process of surrogacy and shows you how to do it in a stress-free way. I bring in some case studies from former clients of mine, and I show you some of the problems that they came to me with, and I let you know how you can avoid those problems so your surrogacy journey can be stress-free and you can go from dream to delivery and not have it turn into a nightmare. So click the link below. It's a free gift, my gift to you. Click it and get it, and I'll see you there.